Volt on the Electromagnetic Planet. Introductory Series Initial Glyph, Chapter 0. After the Ordeal. The greatest criminal in human history. The Pan-Terran Mineral Conglomerate. A group which went back, all the way back to the post-crisis reconstruction of Earth. It was said that behind the Unitian Interplanetary Federation, the combat jumpcraft constellations, the sciencecraft academicians, and the Concordat Covenant of New Faiths, lay the PTMC. But even more simply, behind the political, the military, the scientific and the exploratory, the religious, lay the economic. The league of the largest profit-driven interests in the human galaxy, and at the head of the table was the PTMC. Across 36 systems, employing nearly 28 million humans, post-humans and transhumans, in the light of blue giant stars and the dim withering red dwarfs, cracking open moons, harvesting the various clouds of gas giants, and drinking in ancient dead seas. 4 titanic letters in yellow loomed over them all. PTMC. There were some who knew their great-great-grandparents manufactured the drills and pieces which were carried in the bellies of the first exiled ships from crumbling Earth, whose great-grandparents stepped out onto rough and distant rocky worlds in suits brandishing those 4 letters, whose grandparents proudly assembled atmospheric terraformers with the company name, who pulled up the mountains and dug the first rivers, who planted the first seeds of their new biospheres under those same 4 yellow letters. When their parents, on their homesteads, a generation later, pulled up a fallen purple trunk of a tree covered in magenta leaves, the rust their tractor excavator framed was those same 4 yellow, faded letters. They could then proudly say as they worked, "Yes, that's right. 5, 6, 7, 8 generations a company family." Or say, for others, in begrudging reluctance, "Well, it's always been around, you know. There's no use complaining." Imagining a life beyond those 4 yellow letters was in truth imagining a life beyond the reinforced hab walls of their space stations, or beyond the breathable air-filled domes of their planets, beyond the oxygen gardens and hydroponics of their moons. Impossible. No, not even the post-humans did any better. Evolving and adapting to the worlds in that black star-studded sea still needed time. Time and resources. Lots and lots of resources. High risk, high reward. And only one company was so old as to have the know-how, so big as to not sweat a colony collapse or two. Minimize risk, maximize reward. First at the table, with the most cash to buy up the mineral rights. And of the transhumans, does it even need saying? Before their servers and hives can be built, someone was there with a welcome mat and a credit reader. Someone who had a bright smile on their face, and who had bought up the worlds before a single electronic hominid stepped off the ladder. As fast as the sciencecraft could chart, with ample funding from those 4 yellow letters, of course, the prospecting jump ship would come. Then cargo jump ship, then employee transport, so on and so on. Subsidiary companies built the rovers, built the atmoprobes to terraform, built the hab walls, and sold the standard template for everything from the cradles of the new workers to the gravestones of the formerly employed. For the span of the new galactic common era, a yellow ichor pumped in the veins of humankind's expansion into space. It was an adamantine rule of the cosmos. That was simply the absolute truth, even 10 standard Earth years ago. But now, its assets liquidated, multiple colonies in economic freefall, a crisis of unemployment, markets in panic. And why? Because of the events of a single world, hundreds of light years from Earth, beyond even the distant human colonies, beyond the periphery. Because of one world and the events which took place there. One of the pillars of human galactic civilization is crumbling. One of the stars of the human cosmos has just gone supernova. The PTMC is effectively dissolved. The PTMC is gone. The orchestra tunes its instruments. Sol System. Ceres Cluster. Geneva Station. Ceres Central Spire, Hab Block F. The oldest block. Former seat of the Unitian Council of Systems. Now moved to Lucens Polis in orbit of Pluto. Current remaining seat of the Unitian Interplanetary Federation Supreme Security Council. Within the rich terrain and scenery transplanted from Earth, the structure sits. Within the structure, the hall of our performance. The chamber is a relic, well adjusted to the oldest member worlds and their representatives, poorly suited to the younger, newer ones. But this is a time of crisis. In times of crisis, humans, whether old, post, or trans, feel reassured in foundational power. The chamber is filling up. The assorted guests' seats are full. In front of them, suspended in the 0.3 G of the chamber, the seats of the advisors are also filling up. And then under the main lights of the otherwise dim room, dim to account for dark old buried habs on distant worlds, 19 seats in the foreground wait to be filled. The most important seats in this crisis. Did you hear? They want a lower house at Sirius now. Several of those to whom the unfilled seats belong murmur in a darker corner of the room. Damn periphery. Sirius isn't going to allow that for cheap, another says. What does it matter? They need the majority to pass that. And Procyon isn't budging. It's all on hold because of this mess. Their voices mesh through translators on their lapels. What a monster to do all that. It's almost unbelievable one human could be that evil. The conductor approaches. Peoples of the Unitian member worlds, it is nearly time to begin. An aide speaks this at the main podium. From the shadows of the room, an older human floats in, catching the static sole of their shoes on the carpet. They have the cyan armband of the General-Elect of the Council of Systems. My fellow delegates, it is time. This one commands respect. They all heed their words and take their most important seats. The tuning is done. Despite the tension of the musicians, it is time. The overture begins. My good people, I officially begin this emergency session. The human is old but well practiced. The leaders must show composure in times of crisis. As most of us in our aides attended it, we need not go over the trial details again, but we all know why we are here. As they speak, some of the 19 shift. Some are visibly on edge, others relaxed and composed, but a few look distraught. Our issue is this. One of our world's financial backbones has been removed. More like the entire damn spine. This slips out. The leader hears but does not show emotion at it. They cannot afford to. With this crisis in mind, I have called for this session to take some form of immediate action. We must address this issue quickly and effectively, lest panic ensue. Panic ensue? General-Elect, my people are already coming apart. We lost almost our entire stored capital. The supply lines are a mess, our currency is worthless, and our people may starve within the year. The leader wouldn't normally allow these outbursts, but it is a time of crisis, and they must remain steady. Exactly why, my good delegate of Latons, we must take action now. The leader notices another motioning to speak from the 19. Yes, delegate of Reformed Venus, members of the Council. Since taking this seat, we have seen many signs this was coming. If the Leutenian colonial government had heeded those signs, heeded the signs, and done what exactly? All our trade and reserve currency was... The leader acts again. He slams the seal of the council down and a deafening boom rings out. Good delegates of Venus, you Ishtari and in fact, for all the members here, for the sake of prompt action, I will forbid any further blaming. We can go back and forth for hours about how we should have prepared better. But the reality is the crisis at hand. Am I understood? The delegates settle down. They notice another member motioning to speak. The good delegate from Cygnus. Thank you, General-Elect. I think we will be wasting our precious time here if we simply go over the trial as you suggested. Given the magnitude of the incidents and the public perception, it was unavoidable that the PTMC had to be dissolved as it was. I hope the other delegates, regrets aside, can agree on this. The various members nod or murmur in agreement. One speaks up. We of the Sirius People's Combine agree with our Cygnaean delegates. Unfortunate as it was impossible to stop. I needn't remind our more desperate delegations that it was not the singular incident, but a number of buried crimes of huge magnitude. Issues going back years, decades, and centuries. Easy for you core worlds to say. Your free trade agreements insulate you from the worst. Another outburst from the tense member. The leader steps in, banging the seal again. Good delegate of Arcadia, I implore your restraint. We are aware the periphery is suffering greatly. One who has sat quietly puts 3 of their hands up. Yes, we recognize the good delegate of Fomalhaut. To my fellow delegates, I think our course of action here must be most importantly to do something simple. A pause as the other members quieted. We must find a way to directly redistribute the wealth of the company to the suffering worlds in question. At this, voices cry out. Complaints fill the room. Once more the seal booms. I for once agree with the Fomaliana. This quiets the rest of the room instantly. The transhuman construct is the one that said it, as it turns its cameras. It has been over 5 Earth Standard decades since anyone from Arcturus, of which this was a member, did what they just did, since a red haze Arcturan has agreed with a blue glow Fomali. If I might add, they continue and refocus their cameras on the assembly. We must do something else as well. We must shift popular perception of these events, or more specifically, shift the blame. The council murmurs. What do you suggest? The general-elect asks. This could be big. We in our branch constructs repeatedly felt frustration over the events of that trial. Over and over, the truth of what happened has been told to us, but over and over, there returned missing pieces. The Fomali nods generously and rests their head on their pairs of arms. If I may, the new speaker doesn't need introduction. The new speaker is known and only speaks when absolutely necessary. They listen. We of the faith find this matter indeed quite troubling. Our beliefs have helped keep humanity spiritually centered as we saw how large the cosmos is. It may be that amidst the material crisis of this, a deeper spiritual one has not helped. We of the Concordat of the New Covenant agree. We must find the truth of these events. The leader nods. This is good. Another member, who was lost in thought, now chimes in, for this is a moment of opportunity while the council is focused. Are you suggesting, your professed one, that the existence of another intelligent species, without a trace to Earth, is troubling you? That the notion of another sentient people, who may even believe in a religion separate from any earthly one, is a more important crisis than economic devastation? The Concordat delegate shoots daggers from their eyes at the speaker. Please, good delegate of Lycon of the Wolf Star, if you have a point, present it, the priest says in return. It is simple, professed one. Over and over, the company held to the policy that it was unlikely the natives of the world in question were just that, native at all. Merely an abstract offshoot, another failed or lost transhumanist cult. Even unto their destruction in that trial, the company leadership and board never budged on this point, that there were never, in fact, any true aliens on the Landau 3. The Concordat and its new covenant indulged in this idea, because it would otherwise mean a continental shift of your supposedly perfected form of faith. The transhumans, such as our good Arcturan at least, said xenogenesis was possible, and the aliens seemed very out of place for an offshoot. The council murmurs, some in agreement, others not. To this end, in light of the crisis, we of the regional government of the Wolf Star decided to launch our own investigation. They motioned to one who was sitting behind the advisory seats. Good delegates, may I introduce leading xenoplanetary biologist, expert, Wayan Rayerst. I believe you'll want to hear what she has to say. Thank you to the regional government for giving me time to speak. I will try to be succinct. May I use the main display? The general-elect nods. Behind them, the mosaic on the wall fades out, and images fade in. Up until now, after charting of the system was complete, most of the prospecting data was owned by the company. The Science-Craft did their initial scouting 60 Sol Standard years ago, the jump ship of the UIF academicians, and only did so for about 6 Earth Standard months. A projection of the system comes up, showing the course of the Dauntless Charter. We were made aware of this during the trial, expert Rayerst. I believe the General-Elect said we should not waste time repeating these facts. Sirius was butting in. That is true, delegate from Sirius. What I'm about to tell you and show you wasn't in the trial. It was discovered after the periphery worlds acted in desperation. They amassed a small fund and a lone jump ship, and under the protection and disguise of the Wolf Star Regional Administration, enacted a secret private investigation into this crisis. The chamber erupts in protests. The delegates of the Wolf Star smile wryly. Another blatant case of the periphery sidestepping official procedure, an outburst from the Signia. Flouting any damn rule of law again, the delegate of Sirius yells. Damn 359. Can't they learn their place? Once more the loud seal booms. Please, good delegates, I would like to hear what new evidence this presents, as that is the point of this emergency session. They fall quiet again, with the leader's statement. If you would continue, Expert Ernst. Thank you, General-Elect. In short, the PTMC during the trial insisted on one very important fact, that the Landau 3 was simply impossible as a planet that could develop life natively. As they showed when the star was still in its G spectral class, it was too far away and too small to have its habitable zone wrap the planet properly. She showed the star simulation, shrinking as it rewound time and leaving the lone planet far outside the life-sustaining belt. However, as we know well, in its current form, the K spectral class could have endured for several billion years, possibly leaving enough time for the evolution of complex life. This was already something any astronomical scientist could have pointed out. However, what was noted by the Dauntless Charter during its initial survey of the system was that as it currently sits well within the habitable zone, something was thermally regulating the planet. Something was maintaining a set temperature, moisture, and pressure cycle. Yes, but Expert Ernst, the Arcturian butting in. Many planets have internally regulating temperatures, pressures, and so on, simply down to the transfer of heat through their atmospheres. Cycles of moisture or gas or whatnot. This is well known even to us, transhumans who need not terraform to your old-type standards. Yes, that is true, good delegate, but it is what we found out that changed our view. Through our investigation, we actually managed to attain geological samples the company harvested. Some of the same samples the company insisted were destroyed, buying them off a panicking group of PTMC employees who fled during the preceding events in particular. More murmurs came from the crowd. And what we discovered astonished us. Taking into account the star's original plausible size range and energy released, the habitable zone extended within a mere 9 million kilometers at its closest. It was almost within relative terms, reach of the planet. But that alone wasn't what shocked us. Even further, given the weathering on the rock samples and what we now believe to be native life fossilized within, even at the time billions of years ago, not only was the planet being thermally heated to maintain lifelike conditions, but there are traces of complex life which may have been doing so. The room erupts in a sea of whispers and rabid conversations. Life. Complex life. Intelligent life. But alien intelligent life. It is the opinion of myself and the entire 64-person team which oversaw the private investigation that, at least in regards to the claims provided, it is possible the thermal regulation began under extreme conditions, much like those on Earth. And then when the habitable zone expanded over the planet, those same processes adapted to maintain and foster the potential for life. Alien though it may be, it should thereby be handled with the respect and study mandated by the Robinson Act and ratified by the UAF Charter. It is very possible, in my expert opinion, that we have the first verified trace of xenogenesis. This is it. The delegates try to process this. Many speak loudly. The delegate of the Wolf Star has their eyes pinpointed on the concordant religious member, staring in blunt animosity at an old hatred. The General-Elect bangs the seal once more. Thank you for that, Expert Ernst. This is a shocking revelation. Good General-Elect, we of the Arcadian communes are aghast. Whether or not xenobiology proves this issue true or false, how does this provide a solution? How are we to deal with our people? Because, good delegate from Arcadia, as we of the Fomalhaut Republic said already earlier this very meeting, this is a matter of culpability. If the company's attestations during the trial were incorrect, then they could be more guilty than we were led to believe. If more guilty, more obliged to directly settle their current liquefying assets to address our crisis. Oh, and how you Fomali will profit from that, in acquiring them. A snide remark from the Leutnants. The General-Elect here asserts themselves once more. No, if the matter is to be dealt with in this way, the most desperate parties will be first, not those with the largest credit servers. Now this would require a majority vote. It would require overturning the Unitian Judiciary and their ruling entirely. The General-Elect looks across the room as they speak. General-Elect, I believe I speak for most of the periphery, Not just Leutnants or Arcadia when I say this is an emergency meeting for a crisis. If this is that, then the time is now. The Capellan delegates speak directly. Now a different delegate motions to speak. Yes, good delegate of Cygnus. General-elect, while I do not take the expert's testimony as malicious, I remain concerned with it, at least in regard to the matter the Arcturian delegate mentioned. The matter of perception, or rather, blame. The shift makes the other delegates alert. We of Reformed Venus are unsure what you mean, good delegate of Cygnus, the Ishtari asks. Well, it has come to our attention that very obviously, during the trial there is another party that has not yet been mentioned. Doubtless because they cannot render monetary stability to any member systems or worlds. Delegate from Cygnus, you mean that man, as the natives called him, the human. The chamber grows silent at the Ishtari's words. Exactly, my Ishtari delegate. The one who has, so far as we know, may be the cause of all our problems here. The problems of untold millions of citizens in dozens of worlds. The Security Council members look to each other. The Signaean continues. If even a fraction of what was said was true, even perhaps just as little as a quarter of the company's testimony, then we may have what the good delegates of Arcturus proposed, a focal point for the public to shift outcry and rage at while we try to fix this mess. The delegate from Sirius looks to the Signaean. Do you mean to suggest pinning all the blame? Do you think the reports were true? Arming the natives, killing all those humans, the enslavement and subjugation of the native population as well. The Siriuscan speaks almost methodically, considering the scale of barbarity. Personally, good delegate, I think it may well be possible. As humans, even post or trans, never found a complex species in our centuries of spacefaring. There were no directives that existed for this contingency, at least not serious ones. Considering how advanced our technology is, even a fraction of it ending in the hands of a primitive species, why, we have seen how bad that is. What plans for this we had, were laughed at or left to gather dust. The more we explored, the less we found, so the less important they seemed. Well, perhaps the science craft saying is true, that we can't explore fast enough because the universe expands faster than our budget. This got a few laughs for the only light moment in the otherwise serious chamber. I believe our allied Sirius has something to add here in particular. The delegate shifts their gaze. Thank you, Cygnus. As you know, when this crisis began, we motioned in the Unitian Council for an immediate joint patrol of combat jumpcraft and science craft units, to take into account the events as we knew them at the time. At least once the worst elements were leaked. From Sirius we sent out a request, and had our remote station at Achenar act as a rally point. There, Unitian Jumpcraft 222, Relentless Chariot, carried out the initial patrol. Once it was deemed safe to withdraw, it withdrew. Further, the Siriuscan combat jumpcraft Tobruk carried out long-range patrols alongside the science craft Deep Sensor and Research Laboratory Chen Shengwu. To present the findings, we have Unitian Combat Jump Forces Star Commander Chinoa Animas here. Good delegates of the Security Council, I am UCF Star Commander Animas. I acted as overseer of Operation 555 Neglect. We deployed the Relentless Chariot from Achenar, unfortunately too late to participate in any of the critical events. That being said, when it did arrive on station at 91:18:63.22 Galactic Sidereal Standard Time, it then carried out a roughly 1.5 Sidereal Standard Month deployment, departing after the immediate orbit was deemed safe and no subsequent substantial activity was observed around either the target planet or its lunar bodies. From there, Tobruk and Chen Shengwu participated in a 5.2-month deployment. From this, I can now present my findings to you delegates today. The screen changed to display the records. As you can clearly see, we do have a succinct debris cloud, which we tracked and mapped back to the middle altitude orbit. This, combined with the radiological scans of the debris and reconstructive simulation, seems to agree with the PTMC statement about the losses incurred in orbit. Bad murmurs rose from the crowd. So it is true. The General-elect let this slip out by accident. It was hard not to. It had been almost 100 years since any Unitian Federation official government jumpcraft had been lost to such ends. If I may continue, the Star Commander asked. Please, by all means, excuse my interruption. With the analysis carried out by the Chen Shengwu, we could indeed confirm that most definitely Antimatter detonations had occurred. More worried whispers from the members. It is harder to pinpoint the fission or fusion detonations planetside, however. The extremely strong magnetosphere of the planet likely rebounded very quickly, so E1, 2, and 3 EMP pulse effects could not be accurately measured against the background noise. Any radiological fallout material distributed from those smaller incidents is also likely lost in the planet's active atmosphere and climate. Unfortunately, as with the main trial, the best evidence for this was lost in those same attacks, much like the identity of the human, of that man, lost to us completely. Star Commander, we of the reformed Venus wonder, given how delicate biospheres are, was there permanent damage to the one claimed created by the PTMC on Landau 3? The transhumans laughed to themselves at this, in their hard plastic shells. To the best of our abilities, we couldn't tell. However, I also strictly forbid approaching or outright probing the planet explicitly. We wanted to minimize risk, and as such, while the findings would have been more thorough, it also meant risking the 3 craft and the crews on board. So I erred on the side of caution. The commander was to the point. The side of caution? Star Commander, what do you mean? The General-Elect asked, worried of the answer. General-Elect, sir, if the reports of the PTMC are to be taken as even partially, let alone entirely true, the possible enemy forces on the Landau 3 may be in a position of access of anti-orbital denial weapons of great magnitude. The worry had already been known before, but hearing the military figure of the Star Commander say it only made the pits of their stomachs grow deeper. It is for that same reason I forbid my craft approach or disclose their presence, and likewise why I heavily recommend not sending significant forces to the Landau system at all. We could be very dangerously dealing with our collective humanity's first hostile, intelligent, armed race. This is what they were worried of hearing, not just that the cosmos had an other, but that that other was angry. Angry against humanity, and armed. Even if one planet of primitives, the formerly boundless cosmos, which in this era had stretched forever in all directions for humankind to explore and consume, now ran into the first jagged, rocky shore of a dark, stormy island. All because of that man. That damn human. It was the Fomali who let this slip, but once again they all felt it. Star Commander, what do you recommend? I in good knowledge cannot say. So much was already attempted, so much as the trial described, but outright subjugation by military force, it would require an interstellar deployment never once attempted across this scale. The cost would be prohibitive just to mount it, and there is no guarantee of success even with the skill, training, and equipment of our forces. It also would doubtless not help with the periphery's issues. So, in short, a military campaign, while theoretically possible, would prove unpopular, expensive, and no certain success. This, in essence, concludes my evaluation. Thank you for your time, delegates. Thank you, Star Commander. At this, the chamber fills with voices, questions looking for an answer. One who is yet not spoken speaks now, struck by the lightning bolt of clarity some receive in moments of crisis. Fellow delegates, one of the permanent seats like Earth. Permanent for good reason. Permanent from old, bad wars. A Martian. White-haired as always, and with tan skin they speak. My fellow delegates, I have a suggestion. Good delegate from Mars, what is your suggestion? The General-Elect has only the hope of what is to be said. As it has been made clear, on the one hand, the PTMC may in fact have fabricated its testimony, or altered the history of recent events in Landau 3 at the trial. However, on the other hand, it seems some events do add up, did take place, hence the verdict involved. With that in mind, we also have the economic crisis our periphery worlds are now faced with. Now, at that trial, we, or rather, the Unitian Absolute Galactic Court, saw it as reasonable during liquidation to try and smooth that same turmoil, by allowing many parts of the PTMC to escape in whole, bailing out and lessening the already severe economic impact, rather than disintegrating them outright. We then finally have the current issue of the Landau 3, a possible hostile alien world, the first any human has ever had to face, sitting not close, but yet not that far from our human space and systems. especially the inhabited ones. Is this a good summary, my fellow delegates? Saying this, the Martian takes a breath. Around the room, members nod. Even the General-elect nods. With this in mind, we cannot do nothing, or else we may as well never have shown up today. So we must do something, right? Here's what I am thinking of. What came to mind. We send one ship. An old one, or well-decorated. A UIF jumpcraft. No individual system fleets or civilians. Nothing but the best professionals. We send a few career starmen. The best. We then, because the Landau 3's magnetosphere is so severe, possibly with risk of forfeiting their lives, send them to negotiate directly with the human. All around, voices rise in complaint, but none speak outright. Because what alternative is there? Anonymous probes? An artificial intelligence sent on behalf of humanity. That man was still a human. He would know these were half measures, perhaps take insult or blow them off. It couldn't be trusted to anything but a human crew. Negotiate how? If we bring all the crimes to him, as the trial suggests, why, he would have to be mad to even listen. The Arcadian makes a cogent point. Perhaps, but then again, to deliver these negotiators would allow us much closer a look at the planet. Right in lower orbit, in fact. A risk for sure, but also an opportunity to verify some of the missing elements, as I am sure the delegate from Mars was going to mention. Thank you, good delegate from Fomala. The Martian smiles an old human smile. It is unlikely that man would ever come quietly, but we can still ask. It may be possible yet to intimidate him into complying. Power over a single world, especially one with only a rudimentary grasp of human technology, may yet force him to understand the delicate position he is in. Either we confirm the company complacent, and then retry and press their assets directly to the periphery, or we confirm that man's guilt. Shift public attention to the worst criminal, the worst human, ever possibly, and allow us to shift the PTMC's assets to competitor companies quietly. Or, thirdly, this time the Arcturan chimed in. They were all starting to get it. Should the jump ship be destroyed? Should the starmen be killed? The entirety of humanity now has a common enemy, an alien enemy to bond over. From there, it would be simple to rebrand the economic stabilization of the periphery. After all, now the periphery is our boundary against, well, what could be confirmed as the hostile alien universe. Security investments flowing outwards. How does this sound, Arcadia? Latents? Capella? They were all coming around to this idea. They all nodded. In either case, we will perhaps get the truth, or learn just how evil humanity's greatest monster, the worst human in possibly our entire collective history, truly is. The General-elect looks down, considers this, and then looks up. In order for this to work, it is vital the events of this meeting remain secret as long as possible. Perhaps even from the crew of the gemcraft we send. They all look around the room, already waging whether it would pay off to betray one another, or whether the risk was too great for what little rewards there were. Arcturan against Fomali, faith against atheists, core versus periphery. In the end, they were all human, or some kind of it. Do I have your consent on this matter? For the good of the people of all kinds, of the Unitian Interplanetary Federation, to end this crisis. They all nodded, or at least most did, even if symbolically it was time. Now, I believe we have a rough course of action on our hands, delegates. To the drafting of the new provisional sending of a diplomatic Unitian envoy to the planet of the Landau 3, the Landau system, formerly Theta Pisceum. I shall now put it to direct vote. Around the room it went. Concordia of Proxima Centauri, Arcturus Hive of Arcturus, Arcadia of Hercules, Kekmezo of Sirius, Reformed Venus of Sol, Gallia Min of Tau, Quan He of Draconis, Mars of Sol, Greater Xanadu of Fomalhaut, Gisha Kagali of Capella, Earth of Sol. So on and so on they went. As they voted, they felt more at ease. The old human relief of a feeling of being at one in a time of crisis, assuaging their fears. The risk. demonizing a species of billions of intelligent beings we barely know, risking possibly 100 more human lives, after all those already dead. The Ishtari delegate was looking into the black space between their bracing hands. Venus, it's 100 when the question of millions hangs in the balance. We need to be unanimous. Think. Livelihoods, jobs, homes, security. The question of humanity. I would call that a fair trade. Wolf's delegate was right. It was a hard choice, but an attractive one. Just like the company in the end, minimize risk, maximize reward. UIF motion to send envoy to Delandau 3. Unition Interplanetary Federation Jumpcraft. 63. The Infinite Challenger. Mission primary. Starman diplomats to negotiate with the human and/or native population of Delandau 3. Issue warrant for arrest for crimes against humanity. 2. That man. Mission secondary. Observe and record planet. Unition Interplanetary Federation Supreme Security Council vote. Votes against. 0. Abstain to vote. 0. Votes for. 19. The overture is over. Let the first movement begin.